Welcome back. This week, County Executive John Leopold hosted a very successful forum to discuss the challenges of providing mental health care in a difficult economy. Our special guest this week is Catherine Ravindra, Director of the Mobile Response Crisis Services here in Anne Arundel County, to talk about the event. Catherine, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. I think what folks really want to know, and something that I learned as we were talking off camera here, is just what do you do as the Director of the Mobile Crisis Response System here in the county? It's more than I ever would have imagined. I think a lot of people hear it and they think it's just a phone call. There's somebody to answer the phone, answer questions, but you guys are actually doing a lot more than that, responding out to incidences. Tell us a little bit about that.
That's true. 11 years ago, the county had a wonderful idea that they could use this sort of a comprehensive crisis response system, and built into that system are probably the three things that we're most known for are the mobile crisis teams, the county's warm line, which is our hotline for suicide prevention, and resources and referral for a lot of different agencies that call us and individuals in the county. And then we have urgent care on site, which is a lot of people in today's world have a difficult time accessing service even if they know they need it. You know, families will call and say, I really think that this person in my family is having a very difficult time, or it's a mental health crisis and I don't know what to do. And sort of conventional ideas are going to the emergency room, calling 911. That's what happens in a lot of crisis a lot of the time, and we'd like to present another alternative in terms of having urgent care on site. Simply means that if the mobile crisis team, which I'll explain in a second, or someone off of the hotline, the warm line, call in, we can say, you know what, we can see you tomorrow, we can see you today. It's a very urgent situation, and I know that a lot of places in our county, and obviously nationwide as well, have a tough time getting people in a reasonable amount of time. You know, it's when you're having a mental health crisis, you cannot wait 3 to 6 weeks to have an appointment, or it's going to be a lot worse, or you're going to wind up going to the emergency room. So our county gets that, and actually we've had a lot of success with keeping people out of the emergency room, and in some cases out of jail, by being able to offer them the treatment that they need on site and immediately. So,
and the way we're doing mobile crisis and handling these issues here in the county, this is not something that's been around for 15, 20 years. This is somewhat of a new phenomenon that's about the last 10 to 15 years that it started.
It is. This is year 11 for us, but mobile crisis as a concept is fairly new nationwide. It actually started with a couple of different models. There was one in Berkeley, that's what we are modeled after as a county. And I must say, though, that our county's success with the way that we collaborate with other agencies in our county is truly unique. I've visited other mobile crisis teams, and I have a lot of awareness about how they operate, and it is different here in a good way. We have a really strong relationship with our police department in a truly collaborative effort in almost everything that we do. It's definitely expanded the way that we think and the way that we can get people who are really acute help much faster than we could have otherwise. Mobile crisis teams are, I get this question practically everywhere I go. Mobile crisis teams are clinicians, mental health clinicians, and they are a variety of backgrounds, you know, social workers, psychologists, LCPC, which is licensed clinical professional counselor. There are a variety of different disciplines, but all doing the same thing. They are highly skilled and trained trauma and crisis interventionists, and essentially we wear police radios on our hip. We do wear a uniform, and we have specially marked cars that are rolling around the county waiting to be dispatched like an ambulance. So if you can imagine that someone calls 911 and they're having an emergency of a mental health variety, anything really. In some cases, and I'll explain that in a second, it isn't a mental health crisis so much, but the death of a loved one. We do accompany police to what we call a death notification, because sometimes it's difficult for the family to be able to start to cope, and we stay. The police have long left, and we stay and help the family. Those are some of our longest calls, honestly. They take an incredible amount of resilience, and the staff are amazing. But we do run all kinds of different mental health crisis calls, I think if you imagine the sort of ambulance type of scenario in your mind where police are calling on the radio and saying, I need you to come to this address, and we show up. We have this whole menu of things that we can do once we get there. Get them back to the building and get medication or a psychiatry appointment. You know, do we need to talk with the family and get them support services in some other way that have fallen through the cracks? What does the person need right now? And of course we have substance abuse issues that we see quite frequently, and we can help facilitate, you know, getting inpatient or outpatient treatment. We're very, very well connected to all of the resources in the county, and they know us very well, and it's very easy to call and say, we're calling from crisis, we need, you know, such and such and such, and it's been very, very, very good.
Okay. Well, we know that there was recently a forum at Anne Arundel Community College. Could you tell us a little more about that?
Yes, actually the county executive convened a panel of mental health folks and others to get together and talk about some challenges that we face. You know, the budget is ever shrinking for the sort of work that we do, and the need is ever growing. As other people's resources shrink, more and more people find themselves in crisis. A lot of financial crisis actually will cause a person who is normally stable and previously unknown to mental health systems to find themselves in need of mental health services. So things are shrinking, and we've had some really difficult situations as a county, both with youth and with others in recent years. Unfortunately, although it's not that different from other experiences nationwide, we're not unique in the way that we have needs that are growing. But I think our county executive recognized that we need to talk about how we can collaborate even further than we are right now. So the community college actually is interested in having the sort of collaboration that we currently have grown with the county's public schools. And you probably remember last year there was some unfortunate incidents with youth in the county public schools that required a great level of intervention, and I'm totally impressed with how we did that as a county. I'm so thankful that the people who are at the heads of these departments took it seriously. The chief of police, I can't say enough good things about. I can't say enough good things about the commander of the school safety section, Lieutenant Batten. He single-handedly said, you know, I know what you're telling me is a serious matter, and I will take it up, you know, up the channels, and let's do something.
I want to talk a little specifically about that, Catherine. We had, and what you're referring to is some of the suicides that we had from some of our high school students last year, which almost really was classified as a suicide cluster here in the area.
That's correct.
Specifically, how did you and your team intervene on these issues?
Well, it started with, actually, Lieutenant Batten had called me sometime prior to this incident taking place and said that he wanted to have in the county's public schools the same level of access for the school resource officers, who are, of course, police that are inside of the schools, to be able to call mobile crisis and have them see the kids on site in the schools in exactly the same way as police officers who are out in the larger part of the county in the field. Because he saw that there were kids that were suicidal that probably needed someone to talk to and probably didn't need to go in handcuffs, which is police protocol, to the emergency room. It's pretty traumatizing for a youth to say, I need help, and then have to leave in a police car in handcuffs, but that is the protocol. So he wanted an alternative because he saw what mobile crisis was doing for the larger department, and he said, I want this for the school resource officers, I want this. What do we need to do to make this happen? And he got me in touch with the superintendent, and we all started meeting together about how to make it happen. And so we were just in the school's setting and getting relationships with all of the different counseling departments. And when we realized, a really wonderful clinician on my staff came to me and said, I am sorry to tell you this, but I think that there may be some connection here. I'm worried that there is some connection here. So I brought that to Lieutenant Batten, and he definitely brought that to the right folks. And in doing so, the county executive, the superintendent of schools, you know, the chief of police, the health department immediately convened together and said, this is a serious problem. We are losing some kids. There are kids taking their lives, and what can we do that is even more of a sort of interventionist modality to keep this from happening again.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, out of that whole situation, the Youth Suicide Awareness group has formed, which by far in everything I've done in my life, and I've done a lot of different jobs, is probably the finest committee I have ever been a part of. Every agency that has anything to do at all whatsoever with youth in this county is a part of this and trying to solve, you know, the problem and trying to promote awareness, because it is the third leading cause of death within youth nationwide. The third leading cause of death. We do a lot of stuff for prevention for cancer and other things. This is something that kills students. This is something that is preventable. And we want everyone who is in need to reach out and say, you know, I need help, and know that there will be somebody coming.
Yeah, that's so important. So if there is someone out there who's in crisis or has a friend or family member who is, how can they contact you?
Definitely through the warm line. The warm line's number is 410-768-5522. It's 24/7, 365. Obviously, we get a lot of calls through 911. We'd like to encourage people, if they are not at that level, to use the warm line. But you know, calling 911 is what people do, and that's okay, because they're still going to get
referred to you.
Absolutely. So all channels are going to lead back to the same organization trying to help.
Well, Catherine, thanks for joining us today. I think that the events that have happened nationally recently, the events in Tucson, a couple months before that, actually a couple of years before that, excuse me, the events at Virginia Tech, really shed light on mental health issues and how important they are for us to deal with them before they escalate. So thank you and your team, the Crisis Response Services of Anne Arundel County, for all the great work you do. And folks, we're going to be back with some more Week in Review right after the break.